You're listening to Podium Podcast with former England rugby player Tom May and leading performance coach Simon Hartley. From locker room gossip to fascinating high-performance insights, this is the show that invites some of the biggest names in the world of sport to discuss life on and off the field of play. Podium Podcast is brought to you by True Potential. To find out more, visit www.tpllp.com.
Simon, nice to see you.
Yeah. How are you?
I'm very good, thank you. I don't look that tired, I don't think, but there we go. Yeah. 3 weeks into baby number 3 and I'm surviving. So that's what it's about, really, isn't it?
Is it coffee? Is it Red Bull or what?
I've never drunk so much coffee in my life. My wife and I seem to have got a bit of a pattern going, which works quite nicely and seems to avoid too much sleep. Anyway, stop talking absolute guff. We are going to be talking to Danny Mills this morning, who I think when I think back to Danny Mills, I obviously think about England football, but synonymous with Leeds United, really. But actually, when you start to look into it, he's played for some really big clubs, Man City.
Yeah, and stayed at the top level for a lot of years, which you don't find in that many players. Honestly, having a really long career at the highest level.
Well, 14 plus years, 300 plus games. He's quite outspoken. He's not shy of talking about that. So I'm looking forward to chatting to him. Let's get stuck into it.
Yeah, definitely.
Danny Mills, how are we getting on?
Yeah, I'm good. Life's good. People think retirement is all old people and, wandering around on the golf course constantly and that type of thing. But it's not. I say retirement is a choice. It's about having the financial capabilities to choose what you want to do and also the time to choose what you want to do. And again, it's trying to find a balance. It's almost impossible, I think, in life. No matter how much time or whatever, never quite get the balance just right.
So I think it is a game of golf every day.
Well, I'd love it to be.
Well, it can be, but it gets a bit boring because you find a lot of your friends and the people you want to play golf with are working and doing other things. So retiring young is great, but you've got no friends because they're all still out at work and that type of thing. So, and there's only so many times you can go for coffee with a wife and dog walks before you run out of things to say sort of 5 minutes into the conversation. So you've got to try and mix it up somehow.
Now, one thing we've been talking about just before we came onto the pod and started recording is your running. That's obviously a big part of what you're doing right now. Talk to us a bit about your running because you're running long and you're running quick. Sounds of it. Yeah,
this will be my 7th marathon. I think my 4th London marathon. I'd always had this burning ambition when I was playing. I'd always worked with a fitness coach over the summer. I was far better at running than I was playing football. I always said pre-season I was worth millions, and then the balls came out, and my feet tend to drop very, very quickly. I was great at one of those running down the wing, going, "Yes, give me the ball." Don't really give me it because I look better without it. So I'd always had this burning desire to run a marathon. Obviously, injury sort of curtailed that really. Obviously, retiring, playing my last game at the age of 30, a couple of knee ops, stopped that short. But there was always this burning desire. And I ran my first one and I thought, right, I'm done. And then back in 2016, I got a phone call from Stephanie Moore, Bobby Moore's wife. And she said, Danny, look, I know, and I'd worked for the Bobby Moore Fund, several times at the different charity events. And she said, look, I know that you run. We've been gifted the 1966 number for the 50th anniversary this year for the marathon. We'd love you to run it for us. How'd you say no? It's like, this is, bearing in mind, it should be Sir Bobby Moore. This is Bobby Moore's wife asking you to run for their charity with the 1966 number, the London Marathon, iconic. So I did that, and I've done several since. But I've always, the hardest probably period after injury was not being able to run for 2 years. It was really difficult. I'd always been one of those weird people that love running and quite enjoy the feeling of it. And once I'd finished and once I got back into running after a couple of years, I started running again very, very slowly. But for me, I've trained every single day from the age of probably 15 of my life, in some way, shape or form. And people say, well, why do you still do it? Is it about mental health and X, Y, Z? I said, not really. I said, first and foremost, it's about vanity. I don't want to get fat. I want to sort of stay in reasonable shape. Secondly, it's just what I've always done. It's habit. And I guess thirdly, maybe there is a little bit of and you don't really think about it, sort of a mental health side to it. It's a time to decompress, if you like. But, sometimes on those long, hard runs when you're running, all you think about is the next step. And actually, it hurts a little bit and this, that, and the other. And it's a chance, I guess, to switch off from a lot of things. And I guess, the last thing is it then makes me feel less guilty when I have a decent meal and a drink or two.
I was going to say, that's the big one for me. Sometimes it's credits, isn't it?
Do you know what? There's a huge amount of that. It's like, I know if I'm going to have a big night out, I'll have a big gym session, a big run sort of the day before.
Yeah.
And just think, well, yeah, I've earned. And do you know what? Brian Kidd used to say this, when we used to run and maybe we had a day off or we had a night out coming up. He said, go on, lads, go out. We're going to have a really hard running session, but you've earned a good drink tonight. And those little things sort of stick with you at times.
Yeah. Am I right in thinking you did multiple marathons in a week?
No, not yet. It's on the verge. The first one I ever did, I did in a wheelchair. Bizarrely, I did the first Brighton Marathon because I couldn't run at the time. I had this burning ambition and I was working a lot with disabled charities. And the likes of Josh Cassidy, David Weir, obviously I'm an absolute legend, all backed it and went, yeah, this is brilliant because we're going to show people how hard it is. And I did lots of things around that, getting on the train in a wheelchair, showing people how difficult that was and everything else. And honestly, it's one of the best and most hardest things that I've ever done. And when I'd finished it, what I didn't realise is Brighton's quite hilly at the time. When you go 40 miles an hour downhill in one of the race wheelchairs, it's quite dangerous. But when I'd finished, I mean, ironically, they wanted me to go to the top of a bus. Steve Ovett was there sort of presenting trophies. I had to climb up on the top of the bus, but my back had gone completely because you're just in that sort of that hunched over position. And I almost had to crawl up the stairs of this double-decker bus to get on top of it. But yeah, I've been sucked in. I've done half Ironman. I have to say half because my kids always say, Dad, you've not done a full one. I got injured training for that. So that's still on the bucket list. Yeah, I just get sucked into stupid stuff, if I'm honest. When someone says you can't do it, I go, I can, and I'm going to prove you. I did a week with Bear Grylls just for fun. You know what I mean? It's like, why the moment I am the typical tourist, red rag to a bull. The moment someone suggests something difficult, I can. Yeah. It's like, it doesn't take money or anything else. It's like, you can't do that. I bet I can. Simple as that. I buy every single time.
I wouldn't. I have been stupid enough to do marathons back to back. I did 6 back to back.
That's incredible.
There's a pathway that actually goes round just inside the M25, and I was walking one day and I saw this sign and I looked it up and I was like, I wonder where you can get from one end to the other. Anyway, I found it. I was like, I might have to run this. Anyway, I ran it and it actually ended at Twickenham for England playing Wales, which was the start of COVID. Back then, oh my God! I mean, at 95 kilos, you're not supposed to be running.
No, and that's what I said. I'm 85 kilos. My kids are a lot. One of my kids is an athlete and runs 20 kilos lighter than me. I said, you try running around with a rucksack on your back, 20 kilos in it. It's hard graft, but the only one that I'm thinking of doing, Richard Whitehead, obviously, unbelievable Paralympian. He's trying to get me to do the 7 marathons on 7 continents in 7 days. I mean, I'm a bit like, go on then. Now that I know it's out there and it's been suggested, I can't find a reason to say no. That's the problem.
We hope you don't mind us interrupting the show with a very short message about our partners at the Podium podcast, True Potential. True Potential provide wealth management that's simple, effective and unique. Their expert advice, innovative investments, leading technology and dedicated support are all designed to help you do more with your money. Visit www.truepotential.com tpllp.com now to find out more. Capital at Risk. True Potential Wealth Management and True Potential Investments are authorised and regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority. Thanks for listening. Now, let's get you back to this week's show.
And so talk to us about the time when you actually couldn't run. I mean, that must be pretty surprising you're actually running at all, right? Having had 2 years.
Yeah, it was really tough. So I'd had a couple of fractures in my leg when I was playing at Manchester City. So that was a bit of an issue. I'd come back from that and I went out on loan. I'd gone back to Charlton for 6 months. That move fell through. I went to Derby. My pal was the chairman there at the time, Adam Pearson. I'm not going to say it was when Derby had their worst season ever. Got 11 points, whatever it was. And the premise was go there till the end of the season in the January, and then obviously they're going to go down, and then you'll stay there for 2 or 3 years, and hopefully get them to bounce back. Second game in, did my knee. Was away at Portsmouth, just twisted my knee. That was it. No one near me. Went down. First time I'd ever come off injured. I'd never come off injured in a game before. Broken ribs, broken fingers, a leg fracture, didn't come off, still played on with that stupidly. And that was it, career over. I remember going to see the surgeon and a specialist on the Monday night after the sort of the weekend game. And I got that, we'll have a go at it. It's not in a great place. It's not a great injury, but, we'll have a go at fixing it. Then it was a long road to recovery from there. It was tough. I had 3 months in a straight leg brace, 3 months on a machine that bends your leg at, really, really slowly to do that. Basically, I went down there, bearing in mind this was 2008-9, I went down sort of wormholes of Google. You run, after 2 hours, on this machine, you've got 4 hours left on it a day. You run out of things to Google. So you can end up in some dark places, and probably some places you shouldn't do on Google, in all honesty. And eventually when I retired, I'd been to see surgeons around the world. And finally I went to see 2 guys in Sweden, Lars Peterson and Matt Brittberg, who were, they were involved in cloning effectively. And they said, look, we can grow cartilage outside on a mouse or whatever it is, but we struggle to put it back into the body and attach it. That's still our, we've got up this incredible idea that we can grow cartilage where no one else can, but we can't reattach it to the body. That's the hardest bit. We haven't worked out how to do that yet. And they said to me, look, we can do our operation. If it's 100% successful, you're still not going to play football again. So if I was you, I'd go away, do another year's rehab and, have as much of a normal life as possible. And that sealed it for me. This operation would have been 50 grand. Granted, it wasn't my money, but they were losing out 50 grand on an ethical decision. And I just thought, that's it. I'm done and dusted. So I retired in the summer of 2009, continued to do rehab, for the next year or so, until I think finally I did my first run, probably about a year later than that, a little 5K, once I'd strengthened everything up and got back into it. And I still have to manage it now. It's not perfect. It's not great. Stopping, starting, isn't great. That's why I can't play football and do the charity bits and pieces for that, or the masters, whatever it might be. Soccer aid, I'm not quite good enough for anymore. There's proper good players playing that this day and age. But yeah, it was tough because having biggest part of my game and the biggest part of my life was fitness. I was always one of the fittest players wherever I went. So to have football taken away from you, and then to have that taken away was a double whammy, really. And that the first year of retirement was really quite difficult.
I was going to ask how long it took you to get your head around this, because this sort of stuff comes in stages, doesn't it? You have an injury, and I can remember. I did my ACL in a very similar way. Yeah, I sort of twisted on it, and then you think, I'll be back, and then the dawning realization is, even if you're not going to be back in the same shape and all that sort of stuff. it often takes a while to get your head around this stuff, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
there was two things that sort of went in my favour. Sort of the second one, it wasn't my decision. So I'd been to see 7 surgeons around the world. I'd seen the Chicago Bulls surgeon in Chicago. I'd seen the Washington Redskins surgeon as well. I'd seen physios in the States. Obviously I went to Sweden to see them as well. I went to see Muller Wolfhard in Germany, and they all said no. This is not fixable. So there was a point where I thought, well, actually, this is no longer my decision, because there was a point where I was getting sort of 80% fit and thinking, I've been out for 2 years. I'm going to have to make a decision now about whether I try and play again or whether I don't. I had an insurance policy as well that I'd, fortunately taken out against not playing again. Obviously retired at an early age. If I'd have played one reserve team game, it was null and void. I was desperate to play football again. But I was getting to that point thinking, well, am I going to be going to like League 2 or non-league for a trial? And if I do that, I might last 5 minutes and I'm done. And that's a big chunk of money that I'm never ever going to get back. And that was weighing heavily on my mind, that decision to look after my family. See 4 young kids at the time and everything else going on. So fortunately, it wasn't my decision. That was taken away from me. And then sort of firstly, because I'd had 2 years, 18 months in rehab, knee rehab, not any other rehab, before people get concerned. I'd had weekends off. I had worked incredibly hard through the week. I was basically working 9 till 5, every single day on my fitness. I'd done probably on and off 8 months in America with physios out there to try and get fit. And I was working from home before working from home was a thing. Then I was on weekends. So I still had sort of weekends with my kids, with my wife, with my family. So the only sort of blessing when I came to retire was I'd already had a little bit of that. So I was sort of slightly accustomed to having a little bit of time off, but it was still hard, And I said the hardest thing was losing all routine. Since the age of 15 to 32, I'd been told what to do pretty much every day of my life. When to train, what to eat, when to come in, when to have a day off, when we were going away. And all of a sudden, I had the ability to make my own decisions. And I struggled with that for a little bit. I felt guilty. First and foremost, I was asked to do media stuff. Like, do you want to come away for the weekend and, spend the night in a hotel and then go and watch a game? And I'd be like, no, I can't do that. I need to be at home. I need to be with the kids. I need to give the family time. And that's also one of the reasons I didn't go into coaching, because I think there was this pull and a guilt that I'd spent a long, long time away from the kids and the wife and the family. And then actually I needed to give back to them.
You talk a bit about, not being bored now that you don't play football. Danny Mills is into the middle of your career, middle of the career. Was that a Danny Mills that was 100% focused on football? But
without a doubt, I will quite openly admit, I was selfish. It was all about me. If a move came up, looking back, I didn't think about really the family or those decisions. There was one point where I'd been out injured and I'd come back, and I think we'd gone down to Bristol Rovers in a cup, Bristol Rovers in a cup game, and that was when Charlton phoned me. Old friend of mine, Phil Parkinson, was the assistant manager, and said, "We're desperate for a fullback. We need somebody. We'll take you on loan." I think this was on the Wednesday. So I basically rang my wife on the Thursday or the Wednesday night and said, "Oh, by the way, I'm not coming back this weekend. I'm going to Charlton for 6 months." She had 3 kids at home. It was like, it wasn't, I'll discuss it. It was like, what's best for me? What do I want to do? And it was. And I was, in the early days of football, I was grumpy if we'd lost or hadn't played well, which was quite a lot of the time. So it was, I was incredibly selfish back then. I think there's an element you have to be. You have to be incredibly focused and you have to be relentless. But without a doubt, especially in the early days of my career, it was all about me. I probably didn't think too much about anything else. I was a bit like, well, the family's okay. They've got their life. They're doing their thing. They're financially secure right now. I need to do what I want to do to make me happy.
Was there any thought to life after football, or was that just part of the plan?
Yeah, I mean, I was very, very lucky. I met some good people very, very early on in my career. So I set up my own property company aged 20, and that was always going to be part of my pension. So I always had I had other business interests. So I always had other things going on. There was always a firm plan that I was going to retire at 35, and I was going to have everything done and dusted and paid off by the time I was 40, and then I could put my feet up. And I think that goes back to the days when I was at Norwich, when Norwich were in the Premier League and players were earning £1,500 a week. Back in 94, 95, Chris Sutton went to Blackburn for £5 million. I think was a record at the time, and was earning 10 grand a week. It was like, oh my God, this is utopia. If you could ever earn anything close to 10 grand a week, you've made it for life. You've paid your mortgage off, you play football for 10, 15 years, and then you can decide what you want to do. Of course, we all know that football exploded sort of pretty much after that and went through the roof. But I'd always worked on that premise of get your house paid for, clear your mortgage as soon as you can, because whatever happens then in life, whatever goes wrong, you've got a roof over your head. And then make sensible investments after that to think, actually, what is after football? So although I wasn't particularly proactive within that, there was always a way. And then I think towards the end, obviously I'd had that couple of years sort of being injured and still in training, sort of day in, day out, trying to get fit, because I was quite outspoken, because I was always pushed forward to do the media. The likes of BBC and Five Live got in touch and said, look, do you want to start doing some media stuff? Do you want to start, doing that? And again, that was a way of sort of keeping involved, being in around it. And I didn't really want to do it for the first year or so. I wanted that break. But then I realised, actually, I do need something. I need something for me to have a little bit of routine. And very, very grateful for BBC and especially Five Live, working with some fantastic people, back in the day, to learn from them and give me, I guess, a second career.
I think I found it pretty, when I finished playing rugby, I found it quite difficult from an emotional perspective, even though I actually thought I was completely in control of my emotions. Coming out of that structure that you talk about into shit, what am I going to wear? Or where have I got to be? Or, whatever mundane questions it is.
I think you become institutionalized. For what, and it's difficult. Very good, obviously. Chris Gibson, very good friend of mine, obviously, major in the army. I say it's elite level sport, especially team sports, is similar to military. You get told what to do, where to go, when to do it. You get told you're having a day off tomorrow, but you have a bad performance. That day off goes out the window. You get told to come in at 7 a.m. You come in at 7 a.m. You get told to come in at 9 p.m. You come in at 9 p.m. There's no rhyme or reason to it at times. You just do as you're told. And I don't think there's too many jobs on the planet. You can't go and complain to the union. You can't go and blame to the manager, because, well, you can, but you don't get played the next game. There's huge consequences to that. So, you basically just do as you're told. And I agree, it's to suddenly have your own decisions, to be able to make your own decisions, your own time choices, is actually quite disconcerting at times. And that takes, I think, a little bit of adjustment. And I think now a lot of players, whatever sport they're in, especially struggle. And also the way that football's gone with the media and the fame. If you define yourself as a footballer or a rugby player or whatever it might be, suddenly you lose that overnight. You are no longer that anymore. And I think a lot of people struggle with that. I would say I was fortunate. I had business interests. I had other things going on. I had 4 young kids. So I became a dad first and foremost. I was the fastest at putting up the plastic goals on a Saturday morning. Silly things like that. It's like, and I threw myself into that, which for me was brilliant, because it gave me a separate focus. And although I'd lost the football, I'd still had sort of, two other major things going on in my life.
Do you think it helped that you were making decisions around the properties you were going to invest in and the business interests that you had around you? Because it helped you sort of flex those entrepreneurial muscles. Like you said, you weren't just in a mode of being told what to do all of the time, because you had areas outside of your life. I mean, parenting's a great example of another area where you have to make decisions. You can't be told what to do in parenting. You've got to figure that stuff out for yourself. And I'm pretty sure that your business interests will have had that demand on you as well.
Yeah, definitely. I'd always been sort of quite self-sufficient, always incredibly independent. I bought my first house at 19, put a transfer request in at Norwich at 19, left there, went to Charlton, was only there for 14 months, got promoted, got relegated, left, went to Leeds. So I'd always been very, very focused on me and very independent about what I wanted to do. I was different to most footballers at that stage. I wasn't a big drinker. I was very focused on the fitness side of it. I don't have many friends in football. I have lots of people I know, lots of acquaintances, lots of contacts. But real, genuine friends in football, maybe a handful. And that's after being in the game for 20 odd years. I kept myself at arm's length really from a lot of those things that was going on, because it's great, but footballers don't always make the greatest decisions. Life decisions as well. So I was interested in business. I was tight as you like. So moving to Yorkshire was brilliant for me. I was fitted in immediately, straight away. So I was more focused on other things, and I had this long-term plan that maybe that's down to the fact that I knew that I was never the greatest player. I was never blessed with ability. I look back and I go, I punched well above my weight for what I achieved in the game compared to my ability. I did incredibly well. I got lucky at times and I rode the wave in the right way. But I always knew that there was going to have to be something after football and other strings to my bow. And again, I was lucky, surrounded with very, very good people. Still got the same financial advisor I had since I was 16. He's now retired and he's passed it on, but I still speak to them. I've still got the same solicitor. I've still got the same, all of these people that were good people. And again, part of it's learning, part of it's maybe a little bit of luck, but I've been able to read people quite quickly in life and cut those out that were not good for me. And I've been able to do that quite quickly. Sometimes maybe a bit presumptuous and maybe a bit too quick. Are there things I regret in life? Yeah, of course there are. But generally, I'd like to think, most of the decisions I've made have gone pretty well.
Did you go out of your way to meet people that you had access to as a footballer that you thought, they are good people, so make sure that I stay in? Was that a conscious decision, or was that just something that happened?
It's something that happened really, especially sort of early on in life. Like I said, from a very early age, I was surrounded with some very, very good people and getting good advice. I'm actually very bad at doing that and really bad at it now. I've introduced myself to people and trying to do that. If you ask me to do a media event, I'll stand up and I can speak in front of a room of thousands of people. Not a problem, not an issue. If I've got to go and try and push myself sometimes, and introduce myself to make contacts or network, no, that's difficult. I'd rather stand at the back of the room and let people come to me. That's hard when you manage yourself. And I sort of became my own agent in the media. I'm having to write emails and send messages to people. Please, can I work? Because this is who I am and this is what I do. And you sound like a complete arse. At times, it's like, you're listing off your achievements and what you've achieved, and please, can I have a job? It's quite difficult. Again, I've learned to sort of separate that, and I like, David Batty was one of the greatest influences, I think, of my career. Bats had an unbelievable ability to flip the switch between football and life. I've never seen anybody like it. One of the most fierce, aggressive, passionate players you would ever see on the pitch. The moment the whistle went for the final whistle, it had gone. Just gone completely. When he missed the penalties in the World Cup, he went, so what? I didn't mean to miss it, did I? That's it.
Brilliant.
Can't be many sportsmen like that.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. He is unique and unbelievably different, and he was off the scale extreme in that way. But it was a great learning curve to be able to say, actually, I've done my best. As long as I've done my best, you can't carry around too much baggage. You can't affect. And I think that moment of we said, well, I didn't mean to miss the penalty. It wasn't intentional. So I'm not going to carry that baggage around for the rest of my life.
Yeah, that's one thing that lots of people will say, but you experienced it differently because you saw somebody who was living that philosophy, not just saying that was a logical thing to do or possibly even a good thing.
I mean, Bats would get on the bus after a game and he'd get his little slip of paper out and he'd go, right, lads, game of hearts. From 4 weeks ago, you owe me a £5, I owe you a £10. And it was this, scrunched up little bit of paper. And fans would be, let's say we'd lost, fans would be shouting and screaming, he's getting on the bus or whatever. And he'd just turn around and go, it's only a game, which clearly riled the fans a little bit more. But he had a point. And he was very much like, well, this is my job. Love it to bits. We'll work as hard as you possibly can. And nobody worked as hard as him. But the moment it was done, that was done. And to be able to have that separation, literally like a light switch, is unbelievably and unique. But it was actually a great learning curve to think that actually this is what I need to do. I need to be able to have some sort of separation between sport and life. Because when the two merge, they're not great. And I say, what made me great as a sportsman, as a footballer, that relentlessness, that determination, that selfishness, sacrifice, single-mindedness, drive, actually didn't always make me the best husband or father, at times. The two, one doesn't necessarily complement the other. And maybe in my early part of my life, I tried to sort of parent as I was playing football. And of course, and that doesn't always work.
Are there three elements, and you've mentioned a few there, that you think that you've taken with you in terms of your character from you being the sportsman to now that really are helping you as a person and to commercially in your sport life?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, first and foremost, it's hard work. You don't get whatever you. And this is I've always said to my kids, whatever you want in life, you've been privileged, but I will not give you anything. You will have to work hard for it. And actually, you can achieve whatever you want to achieve if you work hard enough. You need obviously, you need certain skills and certain talents, whatever it was. But generally, it's about hard work. Are you prepared to sacrifice things? I mean, I grew up with some great coaches, and it was about desire, determination, and dedication. That was drilled into us from the age of like 12 years old. That was what it. But if you've got those three things, and you've got a little bit of ability in there, you have a great opportunity. The other three things we weren't allowed, the three B's, were birds, booze, and betting. They were off. They were off, and I listened to that most of the time. I never bet, not a big drinker. Okay, got married and girlfriend and kids, all the rest of it. And I had to have that at some point. But actually, I think they're just good life fundamentals. And I say to people now, no one becomes incredibly successful working 9 till 5. Doesn't happen. It doesn't matter whether it's business or what sport, whatever it is. You have to go above and beyond. You have to have that determination, that relentlessness to keep going, to go that extra mile if you want to be successful. And people often think success is about money. It's not, because you can be a doctor, a nurse, a fireman, policeman, whatever it might be. They don't get paid an awful lot, but they're some of the most successful people on the planet. Success is what you want it to be. And I think that's also what I've helped try to teach my kids, that, and again, that's maybe come from a position of privilege. Go and find a passion. Go and do what you want to do. Love what you want to do. And I will back you 100% as long as you work hard. The moment you stop working hard, I'm out. I'm done. And you have to find your own way. And I think, again, it's not, to me, a lot of people think that's quite harsh, but I just think that's normal life.
Yeah, totally. It's been really interesting because actually, if I closed my eyes and I couldn't see you two, I was like, I'd actually think I was listening to myself.
And I think, but I think a lot of sports people, business people have this. Business people I work with missed out on so much of their kids' lives growing up because they were doing meetings. You know, they were working till all hours of the night to get deals done, having to entertain clients, whatever it might be. And although it's a different, sphere and a different world, the fundamentals are the same. It's about hard work and sacrifice to get where you want to be. The hardest thing then is, when do you switch that off and start to enjoy it? And I've managed, I think, to actually, probably not until Christmas this year, where I actually suddenly sort of had not an epiphany, it's a bit strong, but I had that moment. I'd often find a reason not to do things. I'd find an excuse. Oh, I can't go and do that and enjoy myself that because the kids have got something, or the dogs can't be left on their own, or whatever. I'd find an excuse not to do something. And I suddenly got sort of to Christmas and thought, no, actually, why shouldn't I go and do these things? So I've just come back from I went to 5 days golf in Turkey with a few friends. I went straight from there to see my son in South Africa, on training camp. It's 11, 12 days away in my life. Why shouldn't I do that? But previously, it's quite difficult sometimes when you're in that sort of mentality of there's always something that can be done. There's always an email. There's always something else. There's always another media job that I could possibly take just in case someone else gets it and does better than me and I then don't get asked back again. All these sorts of things. So yeah, I'm trying to find some sort of balance in life. It's not bad, don't get me wrong.
We always end the podcast in a similar fashion, with the same question. So the first one is, if you hadn't been a sports person, was there another vocation that took your interest? What would you be?
I'd have been a criminal lawyer, because I love arguing.
Criminal,
Well, I'd have been on the side for the defence, I think. There's that argumentative side that comes quite naturally at times. Either that, or bizarrely, I think I'd have been a fireman or firefighter, to use the PC correctness in this day and age. I get two completely different jobs, but I guess the fireman side of it, I guess there's an element of danger and adrenaline involved in that. And I think the lawyer side of it was just basically having an argument and trying to prove probably people that were wrong.
Who are the people you most admire in sport and in business?
Business-wise, a couple of good friends of mine. My best friend, Gary Wilson, that runs Endless, a company set up on his own 13, 14, 15 years ago now. Was a partner at Arthur Anderson's and then at Endless, then at Ernst Young, and was given the opportunity to set up a private equity firm on his own. Took the gamble, went out and went, I'll do it. And now he's unbelievably successful. But the first 2 or 3 years were hard, were hard graft. And there was a time where maybe could have lost everything within that. Was a couple of deals away. If they'd have gone wrong, it would have been serious, catastrophic terms. And the way that he conducts himself, the way that he does business is superb, very understated. So he's absolutely superb within that. Sport, it's anybody really. Anybody that gets to the top of the tree. I think I was, again, being fortunate to go to a lot of sporting events. I've always said to people, go and watch any sport as close as possible to the arena, to the game as possible. So if it's rugby, go and sit on the touchline, sit in the front row. You get a terrible view, but you get to see what it's all about. Do the same with boxing, with basketball. I've been to the ballet. And I think there's an appreciation for all of those things, running, whatever it might be, of how hard it is to get to the very, very top. When you see the physicality and you know what these people have been through to get to the top. Because it doesn't matter who you are. You don't get there on ability alone. not to an international level. It doesn't happen. You've got to put the hours in. You've got to put the time, the effort in. So it's any sportsman. And again, a lot of it's, I look at things and go, I can't do that. So they've clearly worked an awful lot harder than me, their profession. Yes, they might be gifted, but there are a lot, and I'm seeing, you guys have sure seen it as well. There are a lot of gifted people in life, but there are a lot of gifted people that don't work hard, that don't have that relentlessness, to keep going again and again. You take knockbacks. So yeah, any sportsman that gets to the very, very top, and even Mo Farah, so my eldest is a runner, and I look at the sacrifices that he makes. I think when Mo Farah won double Olympic gold, afterwards did an interview and said, they said, what are you most looking forward to? And he went, sticky toffee pudding. For 6 months, he hadn't had sticky toffee pudding. And on average, for that 6 months, was running 17 miles a day. Mm-hmm. And you think, wow, to not allow that into your body because he saw it as bad. When you're burning off that many calories, you understand sort of the sacrifices that it takes to get to that level. So anybody that gets to the top level, I have massive admiration for.
You've got some funds to invest in something. What are you going to invest in?
Now I invest in turnarounds now. That's the other side of life in private equity. That's what we do. That's what we specialise in. Taking companies that are struggling for whatever reason. And again, this is the sort of the fundamentals I've learned. Businesses tend to fail for 3 reasons: lack of money, bad decisions, or both. Sometimes they're not always, the lack of money is not your fault. Find it the way that things that happened with Brexit, exchange rates, all these types of things, sometimes are out of your control. So that's not necessarily the business fault. Decisions, putting the wrong people in, people making. That's why I cross over with sport. We all want passion, but emotion's not great to get to the very, very top. People always say, he's on the sideline, it's brilliant. We're seeing emotion. It's not emotion. We want to see passion. But when it comes down to it, emotion is awful in sport. It's awful in business. You have to be ruthless and make those decisions. So, yeah, we invest in a lot of businesses that are good, generally have a track record of being decent, and for whatever reason have failed slightly. And we like to go in there and repair them. We go in for the first 3 months, 100 days, and we would say, we're performing surgery, to heal things and to stop the bleeding. And then after that, we try and make it good. And once we've made it good, we then pass it on to someone else to make it even better, and we get out at that stage.
And you've got, this is the really top drawer question. You've got one film to watch for the rest of your life. You're not allowed to watch anything else. What's it going to be?
Oh, one film.
Hardest question ever.
It's one film to watch. Do you know what? This is. I can't decide between the two, and this is going to surprise you big time. I think I'd either go with the original Toy Story or Monsters, Inc.
Brilliant.
I wasn't expecting that.
No, I think again, I get through those. They are iconic, and I think they're film. For me, they're films. Even now, my kids would go back and watch them. I haven't seen them so many times. They're just the clever thing about, I think, that the Disney, the Pixar, and whatever they are, the amalgamation, whatever they are these days. There are so many different messages within them, and every time you watch it, it's almost like you see something different within that. And there are so many sort of life lessons that when you watch as a kid, you've got no idea, what it's about. And then you keep watching it back. And I think some of the most emotional films that I watch are those cartoon films. Mm. And I think it's probably anything to do with parents and kids, anything within that sort of thing or that sort of genre that pulls on the heartstrings.
Yeah.
I'm not really an emotional person as such, but when I see one of those things, something like that, it's brothers, or there's a family sort of element to it. I guess they're the films that you sit there and sort of try and sit in the background and go, no, I've just got something in my eye. I'm okay. I just yawned. Yeah. That's why my eyes are a bit glazed over.
Love it. I really didn't think that was coming, but there we go. Danny, it's been great chatting to you. You should probably get your trainers back on and back out the door, should you not?
Yeah, I will. I said easy week this week. Again, 2 or 3 very small runs, a couple of 5Ks, that's it. And then, marathon next Sunday. And I just want to say, anyone that is doing the marathon, anyone that gets to the start line, massive admiration for. It takes such an effort. And I would say 99% of the people are raising money for charity.
Yeah.
It's one of the best events, I think, that I've ever done. It's absolutely fantastic. So, hats off to everyone that goes there, that's trained for it, and all the supporters and fans that turn out to cheer you on. Just want to thank everybody.
Well, best of luck. Thanks so much for joining us.
Cheers.
Been a pleasure.
You're listening to Podium Podcast with former England rugby player Tom May and leading performance coach Simon Hartley. From locker room gossip to fascinating high-performance insights, this is the show that invites some of the biggest names in the world of sport to discuss life on and off the field of play. Podium Podcast is brought to you by True Potential. To find out more, visit www.tpllp.com.